Hi, Uri.
Hi, good afternoon. Good
Hi.
afternoon, good evening to you, to all our viewers.
Things are happening. Things are happening. It's been a very, very horrendous 3 days, right?
Yeah, this is one chapter which is coming to close, and the next chapter is about to begin. So,
Uh, in our last talk, we were discussing the ground situation, how it was changing every hour. And we had this whole talk about how India doesn't have any option, it'll have to negotiate. But then, people were surprised that the Taliban took over so fast.
that's the
And
key
you
point.
and me agreed that they were not actually listening. Real politics is not the
Yes,
same deal for everybody. They shouldn't be surprised. In fact, you were wondering why it took so much time. Whereas
what we
all
don't
the
realize,
experts around the world were saying that it just happened in 24 hours. They were kind of pretty much surprised. Uh,
kind of surprised, and they were shocked apparently when that happened.
yeah.
Because just about a couple of days ago, all kinds of bites were sound bites were coming out that no, there's not going to be a complete takeover. And
Joe.
yet, I think the last discussion that we had was on 18th of July.
Yeah.
And we have been talking much before that there's
Yes.
a very thin chance of Taliban forming a coalition government, and they would not stop at anything short of a complete control.
Even Joe Biden's statement, seems very, very foolish right now.
For the politician, they lie. The
They
only
like.
time they don't lie is when they're caught after losing an election, and then again they quickly find out another topic on which they can lie about. So
True.
it shouldn't come as a surprise.
Well, President Ashraf Ghani has fled Taliban. Lots of criticism about him, and I keep going into these clubhouse rooms and talking to the Afghanis, and the main thing that comes up is that the government was corrupt. There's a lot of corruption. I shared a link with you where it showed that the Afghan army had also not actually been developed by the US because they always had this fear that they were Soviet trained and they could
Russian, yeah, ex-Russians, yeah.
ex-Russians, and they would stab them behind the back anytime. So that's the excuse kind of that they give why the Afghan army collapsed. Others are saying Afghan army to thi nahi. It's never been there. Actually, the last time they were was 2001, hardly. But they have a long history. Afghan army has a long history. But anyway, we were watching as Helmand fell, Mazar-e-Sharif fell, Kandahar fell, and now the Kabul siege. 3 days. It took them just a few hours from all three sides, and now we have pictures coming up of the Taliban in the presidential palace. Uh, the most worrying fact, which has kept us sleepless for so many days, is the hard-earned rights of women and how they're going to fare. So, just elaborate on what you feel is
See,
happening.
there are
We
two
already discussed
sides to
this, and now what
yes.
is the situation now? What do you
There are
think?
two sides to every kind of a catastrophe like this that befalls us. One is the geopolitical side, and one would be the emotional quotient sort of a side, the humanitarian angle. Okay, so I'll put aside the humanitarian angle because it's hardcore geopolitics which is being played, which has gone on since I don't know how many hundreds of years now. So where do you want me to start actually? Because Afghanistan, for as long as one can remember, has been a frontier province, and as is the nature of frontier province, they've always presented a problem to any empire which is trying to consolidate. So what was Akbar's frontier problem became the British frontier problem. What was the British frontier problem went on to become the Pakistani frontier problem. And the world around Afghanistan, which is Persia, which later on became Iran, India, British India, which became India, then Soviet Union, the Tsarist Soviet Union, which became the Stalinist Soviet Union. They all went on developing in their own way, and Afghanistan was the only patch of no man's land that sort of time forgot, and they were left the way they were. So, where do you want me to start actually?
Well,
Coming
we've
back to the
covered
same question.
all that, and I was just re-hearing it again, and I think we should start from the present. The U.S., the U.S. abandoning Afghanistan and just it's a Saigon all over. Everybody's been sharing it, and
United States,
excuses
so
that they
United
give, it's pathetic. It's
the,
pathetic.
Yes, it is actually, but then this is a political decision. As far as tactical battles are concerned, United States never lost a single battle, except in probably the 2003, 4, and then later on 2014, Helmand. That was the first province to fall, and after Helmand fell, and after United States and the British troops that were fighting there, they started evacuating and they left. That was a virtual sign back in 2014-15 that Taliban is going to make a comeback.
Right.
Because Helmand is the province that produces 90% of Afghan opium. So,
And
Helmand
that's
is
and
very close
that's
to it's bordering Balochistan.
and that's what's funding them, right? Because everybody keeps asking, how can they be so rich?
Yeah, predominantly. Because our opium had stopped during the time of Mullah Omar, and then again the opium production resumed. And Helmand was producing 80-90%. It still produces 80-90% of the opium. And there's one reason. That is one reason why you have the Shura, the Council of Taliban, which is based out of Balochistan. Because Helmand is bordering Balochistan. So once Helmand was gone, then you can understand the money that started coming in from there. Okay. And these guys have been threatening to make a comeback. See, 2002, 2001, these people walked in. By 2002 March, things were clear. And 2006, it was all right. And then again, trouble started because guys started regrouping. This guy started reorganizing, and of course, Pakistan had a major role to play. And as I keep saying, that United States went in. United States had several phases when they went in to Afghanistan. The first shot they went in, they wanted to get rid of Osama bin Laden. What I haven't covered and what I could cover now is the Afghan pipeline, which was another plan of the United States. You want me to talk about it?
Okay. Yeah, go ahead. Because then the Chinese interests will come in, right?
Then a lot of things will make sense, because the first question that people need to ask here is that, there's this Arab guy who would blown up 2 towers in the United States. Why did US attack Afghanistan? He was found hiding in Afghanistan, fine. But then when he was found hiding in Afghanistan, when Bora Bora happened, United States didn't send its ground forces for that assault. It sent Afghan militia, Afghan army, okay, to take out Osama bin Laden, and he fled. Forget that. This guy was found hiding later on in Pakistan.
The daisy cutters were provided by the US, right? The Tora Bora mountains are very, very, there's a whole network, caverns and all that. So the daisy cutters were provided by the US.
They were dropping blocks from the top. The mountain has got a massive network inside.
Yes.
They didn't even manage to touch that. The ground assault was not there. The US troops were not there.
True.
Fine. Even this, you find Laden hiding in Afghanistan, you attack an entire country because of that. Then he was found later hiding in Pakistan. Why didn't you attack? So United States attacked. Let me go back to Safar Murad Niyazov, who was the Turkmen premier, and he, after Turkmenistan has got the third or the fourth largest gas reserves in the world. Now, Turkmenistan is a landlocked country. The issue with Turkmenistan is that it opens one side to Caspian Sea. Now, Caspian Sea is a troubled area because if you are United States, if you're West, and if you're trying to negotiate with Turkmenistan, the question then is that which way to take the gas out? Which way to lay the pipeline and which way to take the gas out? Caspian Sea is a problem because at one end you have Russia, at the other end you have Iran. If you go to the other side of Caspian Sea, you have that entire troubled region of Caucasus there.
Right.
So building a pipeline underneath Caspian Sea and taking them out in the Caucasus for distribution into Europe was a nightmarish kind of a thing. The easy way out, other side you have China, this end of Asia. So the easy way out was to take the Caspian gas route out from Afghanistan and into Pakistan. So that is where the Taliban government was in power, and it was recognized only by Pakistan and UAE and Saudi Arabia. Even though United States did not recognize the Taliban government, they called the Taliban government to negotiate about the transit of Turkmen gas. The Taliban government went to Texas. I think Ulukal was there. That took them. They went to Texas. They had a good time. They came back and they asked for a hefty transit fee. So George Bush was getting pissed with these people. This was July 2001. Okay. September 2001, this happened. The 9/11 happened. Afghanistan was the weakest kid in the war. United States was looking for a target. So they had this Taliban, which was allegedly sheltering Al Qaeda. They had Al Qaeda mastermind who was probably there. They also had this hangover of Turkmen pipeline, which was not being able to be a, this thing, which was not being able to materialize because of Taliban, because it couldn't transit through Afghanistan. You just need a bomb to blow up a pipeline. There goes your money. So this was one of the major reasons why they took to attacking Afghanistan, and they went in Afghanistan. But then what happens is after 1-2 years, their strategy went down the drain. And I've heard someone say that this was one war of United States where United States went to war in search of a strategy. I don't remember who said it. I think it was Steve Cole or somebody. So the initial strategy was to take care of Osama bin Laden. That's what the official version is. But to my mind, the initial strategy was to chase out the Taliban so that the pipeline could be established. And then by the time they could chase out the Taliban, their priorities changed. And then Taliban attacks started coming in. They started reorganizing. They started regrouping. Attacks started coming in. Then the narrative changed to something like nation building. उसमें भी कुछ खास नहीं कर पाए because there are a couple of optics which are good. The average life expectancy went up in Afghanistan. The number of girls going to school went up. The number of overall children going to school, receiving an education, all these things went up. But again, behind this, if you see, there was a massive initiative to get United States company to come in to drill into Afghanistan. Because by the time that it was sure that the pipeline was not going to be a reality, because the pipeline, there are massive portions of pipeline that had to be left unguarded, and a bomb might set. I told you, all you need is a bomb. So the Trans-Afghan pipeline was an issue. They wanted to make up for that, and they tried to secure massive mining rights. All you need to do is do a Google search and find out that mining companies, American mining companies, Western mining companies operating in Afghanistan. Afghanistan has got trillions of dollars worth trace minerals, the rare earth minerals, the ones that are used to for your mobile phone touchscreen, microchips and stuff. So, but United States got rights for mining of copper, iron ore, and all. This was the picture in the background which was going, and then what happens is this January, I think, there was a Chinese spy ring that was busted, which was working inside Afghanistan with the help of Afghani, Jalaluddin Afghani. It came out in the newspaper. Not too much of a deal was made out of it. So they were trying to mine, and on the face of it, they were showing that we are trying to build a nation. They were making a very shoddy job out of it, because, as I said, as we've discussed time and time again, that the United States lost the capability to build a nation. All they know is just putting one puppet, removing another puppet. Then comes the charges of corruption, which is there, which was corruption was there with Ghani, corruption was there with Karzai. Karzai ke saath to blood feud bhi tha, because Karzai is a Popalzai tribe, which is a part of the Duranis of the whole Afghan kingdom, and Popalzai and Hilzai tribe, which this Mullah Omar was. They don't see eye to eye on many things. So there was this feud between them also. Afghan government was corrupt. And I don't blame them, because this is a 1400, 1500, I don't know how many 100-year-old society. They suddenly cannot wake up and change to a liberal democracy.
True.
Okay. So if you're talking about building a nation, then you've got to bring in people who've got that bit of understanding about what it takes to build a nation like this. Right. A military cannot build a nation. United States' army barges into everything. If you need to build a bridge, the army comes in. If you want to build a nation, the army comes in. If you want to fight a war, the army comes in. The industrial complex is such that anything, any order goes to the army. So an army cannot build a nation. So naturally there was corruption, there was a nation building, and a farce of a nation building, and then you had mining and all going on. You had Taliban's
I even heard that their healthcare was all, in the hands of the infrastructure that they were building for healthcare was in the hands of a male nurse from the United States.
And that too not very qualified one at that.
Not a qualified one.
Yeah, and they would shy away from the ex-Russian recruits and the ex-Russian guys who was ex-Soviet guys. And I have a couple of friends in Herat and all who told me that all these guys are left driving dumpsters and school buses and taxis, pilots and all. Okay.
Trained pilots, it's so many hours of fighting
recruited
experience. They were driving taxis. That's pathetic. Yeah, go on.
So you have a couple of parameters where you could see there was a spurt of growth, good growth. But what we couldn't see was there was a massive mining initiative that was taking place for the lack of the pipeline which couldn't be built. And then probably China realized that too at some point in time, and they started sabotaging it. Because otherwise, why would the Chinese spy ring get busted, which was working with the help of Pakistani? And then they probably realized, the United States probably realized this was too much of a cost to carry on. And anyway, they don't have the appetite anymore. So it's an unfortunate situation. That's the geopolitical part of it. The EQ part of it is, yes, there's going to be a massive humanitarian crisis. People are pouring in. Tajikistan and Tajik and Turkmen are not taking very many people, but they've still taken a few thousand people up north, the northern tribes. But the chunk of the people would try to walk into Iran. And Iran, even there's people who walk into Iran, Iran is slightly better than Pakistan, because Iran where you still can find a job and all. A lot of people want to move to Turkey. From there, they want to move to West Europe as usual. None of the Muslim nations
have offered help. Yes, that's a record they're not going to break. That's a record they're not going to break. But this time the countries are being very stringent. Their border rules.
They started closing their borders.
Starting to close the borders. Even India for that.
The moment Taliban started taking around the cities around the country, around that Russian ring road, that massive major ring road, they started closing their borders. And Pakistan, where the Afghans are treated like they're like prisoners. They only take out the people who they know. They have got a very strong intelligence network. Pakistan. They know which all guys are Taliban and which all guys are disguised themselves as refugees and staying there. So they only take those people out. For the rest of the people, Aam Janta, it's like an open air prison. So these guys, they do move into Pakistan in large numbers, but their life is much better if they manage to move to Iran. Halaki, Iran, I think there's been some developments. They are going to be a little strict from this time around. So it's a very bad case for Afghan guys. And it's a very bad case for Afghan guys because, yes, there's Afghan government, which is there. Their corruption plays a major role. United States' half-hearted attempt in, I don't know what they were doing over the past 20 years. That plays a major role. And Pakistan, as usual, helping the Taliban to regroup and push them back into Afghanistan to gain their strategic depth. That also plays a major role. But then, the interesting thing is, again, if I move into the geopolitical part, the interesting thing is that this one chapter is just not over. So it was one chapter when the Great Game was going on.
Yes.
Then it was another chapter when Soviet Union walked in. Then it was another chapter when the United States walked in. Now it is going to be a new chapter where de facto probably China and Pakistan is going to try to control Afghanistan. And it is always a little difficult for a person or for a country or for anything to keep a control. That's the toughest part. You can be number one, but to continue being number one is the challenge.
That's what worries me. That's what worries me, because this time the Taliban, they can't order them around. This time Pakistan or China.
That shouldn't worry you.
India's quandary, because
Pakistan and China.
I see this dragon rising from the east, and then you have their alliance with Pakistan, which is already, the foreign policy is to break up India. And then, now if they start recognizing the legitimacy of the Taliban government, China has offered them, and slowly, as they gain legitimacy, it's going to be alliance. And all I see is, these three forces against India,
So that go back to that phrase of that
right?
old phrase that I put up a few days ago. You can rent a patan, but you can never buy
But
it.
you can never buy a Pathan. Yeah, that's true. But then I guess
So
the Taliban also have interest in Kashmir, so you can't rule that out.
see
Just as a
again,
not as a strategy, but just to keep India at bay.
doesn't concern India initially as far as Taliban takeover is concerned, because we don't share borders with them.
Hmm.
Our domestic affair is strictly our affair.
Hmm.
If we can manage to sort of control it properly, then there's nothing to worry.
But we are not controlling. Our fighters
Yes,
have left for ISIS from Kerala. They can easily
yes,
go to
because we
Afghanistan.
haven't, because we are incompetent, because we haven't managed to control it,
haven't.
is why we are worried about it.
I see a lot of
I have got
celebration
another.
from
I have
Indian accounts, about the Taliban takeover. Lots of
Taliban taking
celebrations,
over. Yes.
especially Kashmir also, and
So that's
the
something which I
mentality.
would want to talk about, time permitting. That's something I would want to talk about. But right now, what I'm saying is that India should be worried about the fact that now you have the entire Asian region that is sort of condensing into a kind of a block, and India is the only person left out. So you have Pakistan, you have Afghanistan, you have Central Asian republics who don't have much of a seat. They align with Russia. And you have Russia hanging on to China's coattail, and you have Pakistan and the rest of them hanging on to China's coattail. So you have the entire Eurasian landmass, the Asian landmass, which is sort of created a block, and India is the only person out. So India needs to have some real intelligence strategies that helps India balance it out. That is my worry. My worry is not Taliban right now. Taliban should be Pakistan and China's worry.
This includes
Because
Sri Lanka. This includes Sri Lanka.
This might include Sri Lanka. Sri Lanka is Sri Lanka is. I'm not talking about Sri Lanka and Nepal now because they are smaller players. But yes, they include Sri Lanka. And Taliban should be in about a year and a half's time, maybe something that China and Pakistan needs to worry about, because they are not the kind to be sitting tight, and they are not the kind to be, yes, they are putting up a very good show. And I am assuming that they have changed a lot, but there's this certain amount of primal bit which is there, which is going to remain there. That radical Islam part, that identity of theirs is not going to go away. And that identity can sort of catalyze them to do anything that they want. What they want.
You gave Pakistan 1 year in our last talk. 1 year.
Before the trouble starts.
Before the trouble starts. You still at it? 1 year or less than 1 year?
Let's keep it at 1 year.
1 year. Okay.
These are speculations, but let's keep it at 1 year. The trouble might start even before that. Trouble might start a couple of months after that. But yes, it is not going to be easy for them. And no matter what these people say about the East Turkestan movement and all, and we are not going to allow, and we are not going to do this, not going to. It only takes a couple of announcements to say, Islamic Caliphate, and here we come.
True. We've seen it happen.
Yes, and then you have all the Turkmen jihadis and the Turkestan jihadis and all flocking into Afghanistan to get trained around. And then Pakistan would say, boss, we don't control them.
Yeah.
So
that's what worries, that's what worries me, because
the problem for Pakistan would come in the shape of these guys might try to get their side of the Durand line. Pakistan has got a very strong argument. Pakistan says that you've got 15 million on your side, we've got 36 million Pashtuns on our side. So if you have to extend boundaries, then let us extend this side of the boundary to your part, which is understandable. But then you can't reason out with these people.
So in a few years, you might have a very legitimate Taliban, a very fortified Taliban with good infrastructure left behind or whatever, rebuilding their country on Sharia lines, resisting the Chinese and resisting Pakistan's, this clienteleship and everything. Do you see that in a few years' time?
Very difficult to say how developed they would be. Very difficult to say. Because see, they don't have how shall I put it? They don't have the required pool of intelligence as far as building a nation is concerned. They have to invite it from outside. Now, I don't know aaj ke din mein how many people would be willing to come and willing to help them.
They are not the
So
same
development-
Taliban anymore. They are not,
The part of it is, the part of them has changed, the part of them remains the same.
right?
A
And
part of- yes.
I suspect they're getting advice from Turkey as well as Qatar.
Turkey would advise them again. Then again, Turkey's advice is borrowed from someone. If we see who's the real guy who get over here in this entire block, that is actually that can supply solid constructive intelligence in terms of building a nation, probably China, not Qatar, which is a client state, not Turkey, which has been brushed by European Union, and so it's pretending to be a modern this thing, and Ataturk and all have gone and done, dusted. Okay. Super China is the only option, and China is. Let's put it this way: that I don't think it is going to be very easy, very smooth kind of a walk for China and Pakistan to sort of invest themselves in Afghanistan in the way we are talking, when it comes to building a nation. Because if the objective is Sharia, then anything that I think about, whether it's a school or whether it's a modern banking system or whether it's something else, is irrelevant. Because those are influences of West. So would they want it?
I guess in the urban areas, because Kabul and all, there was not much of a resistance, but this time there's the internet, it's very different from the 90s and the early millennium. This time you can immediately get out videos about their brutalities and everything. I'm suspecting the rural areas will suffer more because, I saw this BBC video where they were actually sitting down and discussing disputed cases, and people said the government officials had been so corrupt that they couldn't even rely on the Afghan courts, and they wanted these Sharia councils to be there. There are whole lots of problems in society. It's not just about women's rights and all. There are thefts, there is dispute, and that's basically what law is all about. And marital disputes and all. And this time, as they are assuring everybody they're not going to kill anybody, they're going to let the women and girls go to school. At least that's the rhetoric coming out from there. You can understand they're not the same anymore. Somebody's advising them.
I would take that with a pinch of salt.
I too would, but somebody is.
People won't suffer. The rural people won't suffer. The urban dwellers will suffer. Because if you go back to the last discussion that we had, I said that Taliban was a kind of a social revolution. There were millions of people that fled to Pakistan that got indoctrinated in the Barelvi school of thought. They came back. They were of age when the second, wave of Taliban sort of took over Afghanistan, and this Helmand thing and all of these things started happening. So Taliban, don't think of Taliban as an isolated bunch of people. Don't think of them as the 70, 75,000, 1 lakh odd fighters. Okay. They are like a part of Afghan network. Okay. And they are a part of the Afghanistan rural network. So you would not find too much of a difference between an average rural Afghan guy and a Taliban.
Right.
So the villages, and they're used to that kind of a lifestyle. Whether it's an official Sharia or not, they're used to that kind of a lifestyle. So we won't suffer. The guys that would suffer are the guys who've been in the urban centers and who've been getting accustomed to this new way of life for the past 2 decades, past 20 years. Having an AC that works, probably going to a school where you get your teachers that come in and conduct classes, and you probably on a good day you get to learn 3 things at the end of the day. Those are the people that are going to suffer. The villages are not going to suffer. And as far as Afghanistan, the Taliban leadership of it, speaking about we are going to send girls to school and all, I see, as I said, that they have changed and they haven't changed. So where have they changed? They have changed when it comes to showing a good face to the rest of the world.
Yes.
Which is engaging with the rest of the world, which we've got to know by now. Okay. At one end, they're sitting and chatting up in Doha with these people and saying, oh, we are not going to do anything. At the other end, you have the Taliban army taking over, one after the next city. So they are going to be good when it comes to showing their good face to the international arena, whether it's to get aids, whether it's to lure companies to invest in them, lure countries to invest in them, or whatever. But when it comes to dealing with their own people, I would reserve my doubts when it comes to that.
65 countries have sent a signed, statement that they're urging for the security of the surrendered soldiers of the Afghan army and the security of civilians. I mean, UN Secretary General also. There's just statements coming out, but they're issuing it, and I think US is leading those statements that they need to ensure the security of the people and everything.
Anything that US does now makes me laugh.
Now it doesn't. Now it doesn't. Now it doesn't.
Anything that they do now makes me laugh.
So you were
Fine,
saying
you're pulling out and all is good, but then my issue is what you know. My issue is that you go ahead and sign a deal with Afghanistan with the Taliban without consulting the government, without taking the government into account. This deal, which landed up in United States pulling out of Afghanistan, is the result of a deal signed between Taliban and United States, where United States said that, boss, we are getting out. Please don't shoot us on our back.
But
this happened. This could have happened once Russia was pulling out.
As a layman, any withdrawal is supposed to be systematic. You do ensure your interests also. I agree, but at the same time, all this, trillions of dollars spent there, all the infrastructure, all the trust that you tried to gain of the people, you can't just, just simply. I mean, I think this United States shouldn't have created a Saigon 2.0. Shouldn't have.
Two-thirds of the $1 trillion has gone back into United States' banks. You be rest assured of that. Okay? Because if I'm, as we were discussing the other day in Clubhouse, right? If I'm trying to build a bridge, I'm not going to be employing Afghan engineers to build that bridge. Or I'm not going to, even if I employ Afghan engineers, I'm not going to award that contract with Afghanistan company. I'm going to award that contract to a US-based company who's going to take a chunk of the money out and put it back in the bank. So it's US tax dollar. It's like a very elaborate offshore banking system. Shell companies होता है ना, इसके through वहाँ से लेके पैसा आ जाता है, पता नहीं कैसे. It's just like that. Right. So United States taxpayer का पैसा आता है अफगानिस्तान में. After some optics and all, goes back to the US banks, and the military industrial complex or somebody else, the Wall Street, the bankers, they sit on that money. And the taxpayer is wondering, where did my money disappear? And we are sitting here and trying, oh my God, so much of money spent. Money is not been spent, money has been taken back. China has started doing the same thing in Pakistan.
So they didn't lose money actually, but it's the...
They lost some, of course. So, I mean, 20 years of occupation, you would lose money, but not to the tune that we are thinking.
But then the humanitarian cost, soldiers died, families, and the Afghan people mostly. I was looking at the statistics of how many people were killed. It's always the Afghan soldiers and civilians mostly. And then you have these 1,000 plus soldiers that died, American soldiers in body bags. Yeah.
See, Afghanistan is going to remain a very tragic place till the time the society develops. Afghanistan. It brings me back to that point, which we go back and forth. It has been a land that everybody has forgotten, and it has been left that way. In fact, 2002 ke baad to even United States forgot. After they drove the Taliban away, they started jumping at Saddam Hussein and they attacked Saddam Hussein. Okay, so that is a land which everybody forgot, and everybody, it's become a kind of a dump yard where the neighborhood is prospering. You have Iran prospering, you have Russia which got money, you've got India prospering, you've got Pakistan somehow surviving one tightrope to the next. Manage kar raha hai na? You've only got Afghanistan which is as clueless as ever, which is still stuck in that 1500 years ka purana style of living.
The way I say it, the great game actually never, stopped.
The great game has never ended.
No, it never stopped.
The great game hasn't ended even now. In fact, now you're going to have China into the great game.
Yes.
Okay. So and I have serious doubts about how China is going to fare in this game if they focus too much on Afghanistan. If your focus is on Central Asia, if your focus is on Turkmenistan and Uzbekistan and Kazakhstan and building roads and connecting them to the rest of the world, go to Europe. You've got brilliant relationship with Russia. Build roads to them. If your target is to exploit Afghanistan to your benefit, then you might be in real trouble in whichever way you want to engage.
Right.
Because it doesn't take rocket science, because there are a couple of things which play a major role there. One is the geography. That's why geopolitics means geo comes first. Afghanistan is still a very ancient geography. It's absolutely mountain and very bad, very rugged mountains.
It is.
Very rugged mountains. It's a vast area. It's not a small area of a couple of 100 miles of mountains, and you've got 16 tribes living there. It's a vast area which is mountain. It's a vast area which is desert. Okay, and it's got absolutely wild medieval kind of pastoral semi-nomadic people living there. They love to fight, though they make not very good soldiers, as Tariq Khan, I think, the general of Pakistan Army. He's got a very, very nice explanation, a couple of line description of an Afghan, of a Pashtun. He says a Pashtun is a guy with murder in his heart, poetry in his lips,
Yeah.
who has a brand new gun and a very old wife. He loves good music, but he holds musician in contempt. He loves a good fight, but he makes a lousy soldier. So you've got this kind of a person, you've got this kind of a tribe which is there. It is very difficult till the time you fundamentally change these people. Now, when I say fundamentally, I don't know whether you hit them with a new religion, whether you hit them with a new ideology. I don't know how you do that. But we are talking of fundamental changes.
Doesn't
Otherwise,
it
this society
make
is not going to change.
doesn't it make you think that the Soviet invasion kind of would have benefited if it had stayed? They had not fought it back.
Again, Soviet Union lost their focus.
Yeah.
Soviet Union again lost their focus. Because then again, you see, it is always difficult for a uniformed army to fight guys who are not in uniform. An Afghan would drop his weapon and pick up his hull and go back to being a farmer in 10 minutes. So you don't know your enemy. The same problem that Soviet Union faced is the same problem that US faced, is the same problem that British India faced. And everything was fine, and what's his name? Alexander Burns was enjoying a cup of tea sometimes back in 1740s or 1840, I don't remember, from his balcony. And then suddenly some 40-50 people gather because they haven't been paid by Shuja. Salary nahi mila. Kahin dusra jagah se they came back fighting, and they were doing some halla hulla because they didn't get their salary. And suddenly their entire ire gets onto the British people, and they start killing British people, and that's the start of the first Afghan war. And then Akbar Khan comes in and he butchers the rest of the gang that was trying to make their way back to India. So you don't know who's a soldier, you don't know who's a farmer, you don't know your enemy. They don't wear uniforms. That's a massive, very, very, very rugged landscape. Yes. So yes, Soviet Union probably could have done well, like the way it has done in Uzbekistan and all. But then again, they lost their focus. Because if you read Bear Trap, then you would realize that most of these guys who had come to fight were young guys, army conscripts, who were planning to spend their 2-3 years of serving army and go back. Right. Vision nahi tha. On the other hand, you had this guys who jisko bola gaya ki, these are infidels and this is a jihad and you're saving this and you're fighting for God's cause and you would be martyrs and all. So they have a very strong vision of what they're about to do. So this was bound to be a disaster which should happen. But yes, going back to your point, when even if United States had focused properly, this US army was much better than the Soviet army which had walked in 1979. And you read Ghost Wars and you read the Red S of Steve Cole, you would get to understand. And they could have stopped. There was a point in time when Steve Cole even suspects that he suspects as a writer, as a US author, that United States could have perhaps stopped Taliban's fleeing into Pakistan, but they were somehow not interested. So if the US was serious in its intention, they could have done it this time around also. And I'm not saying that 2021 when the Taliban take over, there would have been problems, yes, because it's still a very primal society. But then this kind of a response and this kind of a chaos wouldn't have happened.
All right. Summing it up, we have a lot to look forward to. It's not going to be an easy task. And India's interests best lie in keeping away, but fortifying its borders.
And engaging with the Taliban. points.
And engaging with the Taliban. No choice there at all, right?
To certain level. In the same way India engages with China or tries to engage with China, India has to up its level actually. India has to really up its
It
level.
has to up its game.
Yeah.
Because
India's got another scale. The one that I was trying to talk about. Do we have the time for that?
I do. We'll
Okay.
go beyond 50, but that's okay.
Okay. This will take 5 minutes. India has got another scare, and I have to go back to Halford Mackinder. Halford Mackinder had said one thing about Central Europe. Central Europe is Poland and Czechoslovakia, and used to be Czechoslovakia and Hungary and part of Austria. Middle Europe. He had said that Middle Europe is a crush zone. And he had used this word crush zone because he had felt that Middle Europe was sitting spot in the middle of an Atlanticist West Europe and a Eurasianist East Europe. And both these two powers were expansionist and universalist power, and they would try to take one another up. And in their expanding into each other's territory, Middle Europe, which was sitting in the middle of this two expansionist power, would be crushed. That is what he had predicted. And that is precisely what happened after the fall of the Berlin Wall. For 10 years, there was this massive, celebration about Middle Europe coming into existence, because then Poland and everybody were liberated from behind the Iron Curtain. And this area, Poland and Czech Republic, Czechoslovakia, they've got a very vibrant and a very rich culture when it comes to history and philosophy and art and literature and everything. Kundera and Danilo Kiss and all of these people are from that region. So very strong European literature contributions this region has. But what happened is very soon afterward, NATO had started expanding. And now NATO has reached to Ukraine. So Middle Europe, that fabled Middle Europe, that very rich mixed culture of Western Christendom and Eastern Christianity and East and West and a part of Muslim infusion and all, doesn't exist anymore. Yugoslavia was the first to go, 1999.
Yes.
And then you had NATO expanding, and now NATO has reached the Russian borders. So Middle Europe is gone. Now, Middle Europe was a sort of a melting pot.
Okay.
Now, when I talk about a melting pot, then a melting pot is basically a pot where there's different colors that are pouring in. Okay. Now, when there are colors pouring in, there would be a point in time when these colors have started mixing with each other, but they still retain their core characteristic. So there's a very vibrant kind of a kind of a collage that is created. So you have probably a red mixing with a yellow, mixing with a green, mixing with a blue, and then you have a red which is core, which is at one corner, and that part of red which is mixing with yellow is turning into something else, while yellow retains its own core characteristic. So this creates a very vibrant kind of a picture. The problem with this kind of a melting pot is that you don't know where to stop. As they keep mixing, as the colors keep mixing, too much of mixing, and you have a very ugly looking, dark kind of a shapeless, colorless kind of a thing. So the biggest challenge that the melting pots have faced is that when to freeze that moment when the colors are at their absolute vibrant best, when they have mixed some and they have preserved some of their original identity and they have created a brilliant collage and they keep it that way. The biggest problem that the melting pots face is that they don't know when to stop. And you probably cannot stop, because if you stop, then the infusion also stops, right?
Yes.
So by their nature, then what happens is melting pots are geographies, are civilizations which have limited shelf life.
Would you put the US and the UK into this, because they are melting pots too?
I'm coming to India actually.
Achha.
Okay. So I find the relationship between that Middle Europe and India very interesting. India is also a melting pot, but India is a melting pot with slight bit of difference. India has got mountain on one side, water on three sides. So that infusion has always happened from northwest.
Yes.
Okay. You have Islam, which is coming from northwest. Then you have colonial influences which came through the sea, and then these guys left and all, and Islam came, and then infused some and then it stayed back. The colonial culture stayed back. One reason why we are talking in English. And India somehow managed to preserve that sort of a cultural identity of being a melting pot for a longer time compared to Middle Europe, because India was not open from all sides and sitting in the middle of two universalist forces, so to say.
Right.
Okay. Now, geography played a major role there because, again, as I said, water and
Yes.
mountains and all. But now you have the advancement of technology, which has made geography a little obsolete. So now ideas and ideologies and things like that, they don't depend on people traveling from a far off land and bringing new ideas. They travel through internet. So borrowing from Halford Mackinder, I wouldn't say that India is a trust zone, but India is definitely a stress zone. And India is under a lot of stress because India has been infested with woke ideology, which is coming, which has caught hold in the urban colonial mindset, large number of people.
Yes.
A fair number of rural Indians remain that have that nationalistic streak in them, but they are like circumambulating. They don't know what to do, so they're going from Ganesh ka plastic surgery to Pushpak Biman and Concord and jet and whatnot. They're all over the place. It will take them a lot of time before they sort of narrow down and crystallize on their identity. But on the one hand, you have the woke culture, which is creating a lot of stress. On the other hand, you have a certain amount of pacification that Islam is going through.
Yeah.
And in the tech feudalism part, if you go back to that discussion that we had, in the tech feudalism part, where I expressed my concern about the fact that techno feudalism has found out two partners in Islam and in woke culture. The ossified, the Wahhabi form of Islam.
Yes, true.
Culture.
Yeah.
So these two have walked in and has kind of created a situation right now in India, which is heavily developing India into a stress zone. India needs to crystallize and India needs to find out an identity of its own. I don't know how, I don't know what identity, but there has to be an identity. Otherwise, events like these, a Taliban taking over, so some more amount of Wahhabism, because you've said already that people are, praising the Taliban for taking
over. Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
And elites.
I think
mostly
NDTV is also whitewashing.
Whitewashing. Going on the lines of CNN that the Taliban entered with masks on their face.
Masks
very irresponsible, yes. Yeah.
So till the time you have crystallized on your identity, you would find it extremely difficult. It is going to be a stress on you. You will be crushed from both ends as far as these two ideologies are concerned, and it will be very difficult for you to survive. And one major problem that normally normally we could argue that it takes 50-60 years to find out your identity till the time you have sort of realized that you need an identity. The one problem that we have is we don't have that kind of time.
Right.
So that's one thing which I finally wanted to share about the identity crisis, the way I see as India as a stress zone geopolitically. Especially India today reminds me of Middle Europe.
When I used to discuss with Abhinav Prakash, he gave it 5 years. I gave it 10 years, but he said, within 5 years, we might have such kind of an identity, which, a civilizational one. And I think Harsh Madhusudan and Rajiv have also written this book, a new idea of India. They all give it a couple of years, 5 years at the most. I think it will take a decade because, India has a lot of fault lines. And as you said, being stressed from all over, it's going to take some time.
I don't know about that. I hope and I pray that it comes to that and that it takes 5-10 years and they crystallize on one, but it's required. Otherwise, you're going to be, because you're going to start questioning yourself.
Yes.
You're going to start questioning your motives. And at a personal level, then this becomes a major, dampener. Because as a personal level, then as a trainer, then this is me speaking. If you are seeking validation for everything that you do, then there is a problem. If your personality is non-existent and you're going on seeking validation, you're trying to be a part of a group which you consider is cool as per your definition, then there's a problem. Then that group is going to chew you alive.
True.
In some time.
And it's happening actually. Happening.
It's happening to a large number of people. Yes.
I can speak for UP, and somehow we've saved Kashmir, but let's see. Let's see. Thank you so much, Ari. It's been wonderful talking to you. We'll continue this hopefully in a
Yes,
geopolitical
yes.
series, and Alfred Mackinder has to be on the forefront.
I mean, my talk, Alfred Mackinder, is going to feature now and then. Alfred Mahan and all.
Yes.
Alfred Mahan se yaad aaya that Rimland now, Alfred Mahan's Rimland, India is the only country left now in Rimland which is still now trying to
Hold
touch
on.
with United States and think US to be their friend and all. Baki Rimland, like India, Iran is gone, Pakistan is gone, little bit of Pakistan up there, Afghanistan is gone, China is completely gone, Upar Russia hai. So India is the
only
single country which is standing, trying to be the friend of US.
Revenge of geography. Coming back to Robert Kaplan.
Yes,
This is
someday
India's curse.
You're gonna talk about that.
Okay.
Because I haven't read that book in full, so you have to talk about that. Maybe I'll do the questioning and you do the talking.
He appreciate his genius, and every time something like this happens, I keep going back to that book, and I feel that he knew it. Robert Kaplan, Revenge of Geography, always.
So these guys are fabulous.
Fabulous, isn't it? They get everything right.
But you have to look through their establishment bias, and you have to understand their greatness, because they play it that way.
They do.
So if you read them enough, you would know where they're trying to highlight the American goodness and American.
Oh yeah, that is always there.
Magnanimity and
but then the other parts that we often overlook as Indians, they specifically have that quite correct. They aptly put the finger on it. This is it. This is India's curse. The geography. It's always the geography, and we are going to be. We have to live with that. It's real politics.
That's the reason. That's the reason why you need to have a very strong economy. That's the reason why you need to have a very strong domestic product. Yeah. Because your foreign policy counts for naught. Okay.
Unless
your domestic is strong. It is nothing.
Well, let's hope it reaches the proper authorities.
And then even then something happens tomorrow and you say, oh my God, what happened? How did the Taliban
take over? I remember that.
I was amused when I saw that. This is something which we've been discussing for so long now, and then people meet our friends on FB. They're surprised.
They're surprised. Yeah. How did it happen so quickly and collapse like a domino? And you said 2014 they already had Helmand, and why would they be surprised? Yeah. Well, anyway, we are always, I guess, cursed to be Cassandras, right? Yeah. Keep talking and nobody's going to listen, right? Thank you, Ari. It's been a delight.
Thanks for having me.
I hope things work out. Thanks.
Bye-bye.